scheduled council meeting on Tuesday, April 12th at 7 p.m. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Charlie Davidson,
Here.
George Glover,
Here.
Ben Sosetta,
Here.
Kyle Nordick,
Here.
Tom Jones,
Here.
George Capps, Brandy Bailey,
Here.
Jim Schrader.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We'll, if you'll join us, Pastor Ron Rhodes will lead us in the invocation, and we'll then do the pledge salute. You're fine.
Okay. Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful and so fortunate to live in such a wonderful city as we've got right here in Park City. We thank you for those who serve us. We thank you, Lord, for our police department and the officers that are out there on the street. We pray for their protection, that you'll watch over them as they protect us. We thank you for the fire department and everything they do for us. And Father, we thank you for the people on this council. And we ask, dear Heavenly Father, that you protect them, because there's no way they're going to make everybody happy. So Father, just protect them. Look out for them, and I thank you for them. We're just very grateful for them. And Lord, sometimes things can't work out to everybody's satisfaction. But we know, God, that you're in charge overall, and I thank you, and I praise you. And I just ask these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. And as I understand, we didn't have a sign-up sheet out there for the public to sign up for agenda items or public forum. If there's anybody that's there in the gallery that would like to speak, if you raise your hand, and I'll make a note here. All right, perfect. Okay, moving right along, we'll start out with approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? George Glover.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Jim.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Awards and presentations, Dana?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It is always my privilege to be able to talk about our staff. We are very fortunate this evening because we have a new hire and we also have a promotion. These are both within our police department, and I do always like to say we have an exceptional police department. And we are really happy this evening to be able to add an exceptional individual to our police department. I would like to introduce this evening Amanda Smith. She comes to us as a certified law enforcement officer, which is always nice. She previously served as a police officer with the Wichita Police Department for approximately 6.5 years. After that, she was employed as a police officer for over 1 year with the Sterling Police Department, and that was her last position before coming to us. While Amanda was employed as a Wichita police officer, she was awarded the Bronze Wreath of Valor in 2012 and once again in 2014 for her commendable actions during 2 different critical incidents. She attended college at Walla Walla Community College in the state of Washington, where she earned a bachelor's degree in general studies. So once again, we have an exceptional candidate, and we are very happy to introduce her as a new officer with the Park City Police Department. And the mayor will be swearing her in, so just go up.
Welcome.
Thank you.
right hand. On my honor,
On my honor,
I will never betray my badge,
I will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character,
my character,
or the public trust.
or the public trust.
I will always have the courage
I will always have the courage
to hold myself and others accountable
to hold myself and others accountable
for our actions.
for our actions.
I will always uphold the Constitution
I will always uphold the Constitution
of the United
of the
States,
United States,
the state of Kansas,
the state of Kansas,
my community,
my community,
and the Park City Police Department.
and the Park City Police Department.
Congratulations.
So it is always wonderful to grow our police department, and it's really wonderful to grow our people within our police department. So we have the honor this evening to introduce Jeffrey Melton. Some of you have already know who he is because he's been employed with us since April 13th of 2021. He came to us as a certified law enforcement officer as well. We appreciate always when we get that experience when we bring people on. He was previously employed as a road patrol deputy with Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office for about 2.5 years. And not only did he just bring that experience, but it was Park City experience as well, because he was assigned to this area during that time. He has worked overnight. He's been on third shift, so you may not have seen him as much as some of our other officers. He is being promoted this evening to the rank of corporal, which is a leadership building opportunity for our department. The corporal serves as a shift leader in the absence of a sergeant on the shift. They serve as field training officers for our new police officers, and they move into positions like detective for us as well. So once again, leadership ability. And so, Jeffrey, would you please come forward?
It's my pleasure to present you with the badge of the rank of corporal. I'll take this one from you. Let's hope this is a bloodless. Probably really wear a vest. Congratulations.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Dana. Okay, we have nobody signed up for public forum unless anybody's changed their mind. We'll move on to staff reports. Madison with the Senior Center.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's been a while since I've given a report, so I apologize if I'm giving too much information, so please stop me. So I'm just giving a few updates of what's been going on at the Senior Center. First, we have received and started utilizing a new attendance and record tracking system. It's called My Senior Center. We did budget for it this year, but Sedgwick County was nice enough to provide those to all Sedgwick County senior centers this year. This will allow us to more accurately report attendance and activity records. So we started using it April 1st, and we've already recorded almost 100 active members, meaning that they visited the senior center at least once since April 1st. This does not include our Meals on Wheels recipients. We're not able to track that with the system at this time, but we do deliver on average about 55 to 60 meals every day, or Monday through Friday. We're still working on getting all of our seniors enrolled in the system, so numbers should be more accurate in the future. Okay, a few more updates. Our senior center van, which we received a grant from through Wichita Transit, I wish I had an update on that, but the update I was given was that there was no update at this time. I know Wichita Transit it's still been difficult for them, for their vendor to acquire parts. So I was told spring of this year when we'd receive it, and I'm fairly certain that we won't be receiving it this spring, but we're looking forward to it, hopefully in the near future. As many of you may remember, the senior center had a water leak in September of last year, and thanks to the city's maintenance and public works guys, we got that all taken care of and is put back together, and we even have a nice big Park City flag mural in there, so stop on by and see it if you'd like. So every year we usually provide AARP tax aid assistance. It's a really wonderful service, very utilized at the senior center. Unfortunately, this year, due to lack of volunteers and national COVID restrictions, we were not able to do that this year. So this is kind of my call out to anybody who would be willing to volunteer for that service. Please get with me and I can refer you to the right people. Hopefully next year we'll be able to provide that service at the senior center for people in our community. This year I've been having to refer them outside of Park City for that. Just a little update on me, I guess. The first week of June, I'll be attending a virtual conference. It's called Age Plus Action, and it's put on by the National Council on Aging. And as a member of the National Institute for Senior Centers, I'm able to attend that for free this year. So I'm very excited at that. I'll be able to learn vital information on how to recover from the pandemic and also innovative ideas from experts in other senior centers around the country on how to run senior centers. Last but not least, just a few snippets of activities and programs that we are offering right now and in the near future. We're currently doing Bingo Size, which is exactly how it sounds. It's a combination of bingo and exercise. We have about 12 to 15 participants in that twice a week for 10 weeks. It's been a lot of fun. It is an evidence-based program, which we're required to do once a year. We have Mahjong for beginners. We have a volunteer appreciation dinner this Thursday. That's luau themed. We do have pickleball lessons on our new pickleball court starting April 20th. A Mother's Day afternoon tea in May. And Are You Smarter Than a Scam Artist in May as well. Also an update on Chisholm Trail Seniors, which is an organization that actually helped start the senior center. They have held their annual 4th of July bingo and raffle fundraiser for many years, except for the past 2 years due to COVID, but they have decided to resume that this July. And lastly, just a call for volunteers. Anybody who is willing and able, we need Meals on Wheels volunteers, drivers for our volunteer transportation program, and of course, like I said earlier, volunteers for AARP tax aid for next year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Charlie.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to just say we appreciate your hard work at the senior center. I'm new on the council, but all I hear is phenomenal things coming out of the senior center and how well it's going. So I appreciate everything that you do for that senior center and all the seniors in our community.
Thank you, my pleasure.
I gotta say, I think we have the best senior center in South Central Kansas for sure, maybe further. So I would agree with that, and thank you for all of your hard work and what you put into our folks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Chief Boston.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has been in the news here lately. I'll just quote a couple of sentences here that came out of the news on March 4th, so a little over a month ago. Federal agencies, including the FBI, have warned U.S. business owners and municipalities to prepare now for cyber attacks in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. While attacks on bigger, more prominent companies are making headlines, it's also an increasing problem for Washington State's small and local government entities, including municipal and county governments. Many of these entities have an IT staff in the single digits, as do we. Nothing to compare with major cities like Seattle and so forth. So in response to that, in discussion with Steve Hubeli, who's our IT manager, on March 31st, Steve participated in a cybersecurity and firewall test on the city's computer network. And he coordinated this testing in conjunction with a company called Western NRG, which is the company that manages our firewall. We have an actively managed firewall, which is a real advantage to us. The results show that we're secure from all outside threats. That included things such as other applications, viruses, intrusions, and spyware. The test also identified certain locations around the world, particularly certain nations, where attempts against our network have originated. And it's kind of an eye-opener to look at the list of countries from which attacks on our network have originated and have been basically repelled by the firewall that we have. We passed all the tests for attacks on our firewall. The testing did reveal that there's only one specific type of risk that remains outstanding, and I can't identify that in a public meeting for security reasons, but the firewall management company recommended a product to eliminate that and plug that hole, and that's the last measure that we could take, the last thing that's available on the market that could address the risks that we face. So Steve and I will be having discussions very soon with Sean about that and how to proceed with that. And finally, I'd just like to commend Steve for the work that he's done working on our computer network to try to make it as secure as possible. I think he's done an outstanding job. I'd be glad to answer any questions, if there are any.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank
Not
you.
seeing anything? Thank you. Ben?
I was waiting for you to call the next.
Oh.
Sorry.
We'll move on to the consent agenda. Ben?
Now, I want to go through on the consent agenda and make a motion. I do want to, though, and I know that this has to be very specific, very clear. So, on here, anytime, I'm just going to make a request, actually. When we have changes, either whether it's ordinances or whatever, is there any way when we have those that we can either red line or red note what those changes are to those documents that were being given for change? Just as a easier way to clarify, we get a couple days to look over the agenda, and if we have to go back and try to find old documents or, so I don't know if that's clear.
Okay.
But I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Charlie?
Yeah, I'll second for discussion. I just had a couple of questions on a couple items, so can we?
Okay, I'm gonna withdraw my motion just real
Can't,
quick.
this is consent agenda. There's no discussion on consent agenda items. If you wanted to have a discussion, we had to take it off of the consent agenda.
Okay, that was my question. Can we remove item 3 and item 4? I just have some clarifying questions is all.
We've actually already approved what the agenda is, council?
Or can we move them to later on? I just had some
Sure, you can
questions.
remove them and put them at the end of the agenda. If that's the
So we have-
motion, and then the second, and then vote on it.
Well, we have a standing motion already for to approve the consent agenda, and then Charlie seconded it, but he's wanting to remove some stuff off of it.
You can withdraw the motion in the second.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that we move items 3 and 4 from the consent agenda and put them to the end of the agenda and approve the rest as presented.
I'll second.
So your motion is to approve item 1, 2, and 5,
Yes.
the consent agenda? Okay. And Charlie, did you second?
I did.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. We'll make item 3 as item, let's do 14A. And then item 4 will be 14B. Okay? All right, moving on to new business. Receive an update on budget law changes and discuss, consider, and approve budget calendar. D.
Good evening. Sean and I felt like a refresher of all the budget law changes from last year were in order. There's a lot of new details to us. I know my memory got a little cold on it, and I had to refresh mine, so I thought maybe you all would like a refresher as well. And I know we have some new council members, so I'm basically going to give the same presentation I gave last year about this time, telling you what all those details are. So, the enactment of Senate Bill 13 and Senate substitute for House Bill 2104 repealed the tax lid for the 2022 budget, created a new budget timeline, and implemented a revenue neutral rate, which is referred to as the R&R. The R&R is the mill levy computed using the June 15th estimated assessed valuation. That word is important here, it's estimated. That exactly equals the amount of ad valorem taxes levied in the previous year, so the dollars. In other words, if a city does not go through the process to exceed the revenue neutral rate, you will be levying the exact same property tax dollars, not mills, as you did in the previous year. There is no increase allowed in the R&R formula for such things as expiration of property tax abatements, which for us would be IRB properties going back on the tax rolls, new improvements, remodeling, renovations, and so forth. So unless we go through the process outlined in the new law to exceed R&R, we must use the R&R as our estimated mill levy, which provides us with the same dollars as last year. The R&R is provided to entities each year by the county clerk, along with the June 15th budget estimates. Entities that do plan to exceed the R&R must inform the county clerk by July 20th of the amount of the ad valorem tax to be levied and subsequently publish a notice, hold a tax rate hearing, and approve a resolution to exceed the R&R prior to holding the budget hearing and adoption. On the budget calendar in your packet, there's a red dotted line across the page. That's the point you must have a decision made regarding whether you're levying the R&R, and if not, then the amount that you are levying. Sean and I are again recommending that we always plan to exceed the R&R. In the time I've worked here, the council has held the mill levy at the same level, and it provided us more tax dollars due to growth in our community, which then allowed us to do more. However, if we were to stay with the R&R, we would actually be forced to do less due to inflation. I mean, think about the inflation right now and trying to do same things with last year's dollars. Sean and I feel Park City needs to be able to capture the dollars related to the growth in our community in order to provide the additional funds needed to expand and provide better services. Additionally, the State of Kansas Municipal Services Division has strongly advised that all cities always hold the tax rate hearing, go through the same process that you would if you intended to exceed the R&R. The reason is that the new law does not even allow for the final valuation, as compared to the estimate, calculated in November. That's after everyone has argued their taxes, so it gets changed, to bump the final mill levy above the R&R. If it does bump over that, even just 0.001 mil, so 1/1000th of 1 mil, then those additional taxes must be refunded to all taxpayers, with the city paying the cost for the county to do that. The state has indicated that holding the tax rate hearing puts us back in the old law that does allow an increase in the final mill levy. Beginning this year, in 2022 for the 2023 budget process, the county clerk will notify taxpayers via mail or email of all the taxing subdivisions that are planning to exceed R&R. So although we implemented the law last year, these notices did not happen last year. The state pays the cost of these notifications for the first 2 years, which would be the notices mailed in 2022 and in 2023. In subsequent years, the cost shall be shared proportionally by the taxing entities that plan to exceed the R&R based on the amount of property taxes levied by each of those entities. The notice will include a lot of information, so I wouldn't be surprised if you all get a lot of phone calls. For all entities that are relevant to each taxpayer's property, that taxpayer's notice will include the following information: each taxing entity's R&R, each entity's prior mill levy and taxes levied on that property, the current year's appraised value and assessed value of the property, and the estimate of each entity's current year tax on the property based on the revenue neutral rate. For those entities that are planning to exceed the R&R, the notice will also include each entity's proposed mill levy, the proposed property tax revenue needed to fund the proposed budget of each entity, the difference between each entity's tax estimates based on the proposed mill levy and the revenue neutral rate, and the date, time, and location of each entity's public hearing. Although the state of Kansas is not a taxing subdivision for purposes of this, the notice shall include a statement of the statutory mill levies imposed by the state and the estimate of tax for the current year on the taxpayer's property based on those levies. Although the state's mill levy will stay the same, they did not impose the full R&R process on themselves. Your agenda packets include a copy of the proposed 2023 budget calendar, and the dates have been set to comply with the required submission timeframes. In addition to the regular council meeting dates, we're proposing 3 special council meetings, the same number we ended up having last year. The special meetings are budget work sessions scheduled at 6 p.m. on June 21st, July 12th, and July 26th, and dinner will be provided. The department heads will be in attendance on June 21st to discuss their budget and respond to your questions similar to what we have done in the past years. If a city is not planning to exceed the R&R and does not want to hold the tax rate hearing anyway, as the state has recommended, then the same time frames apply that we always had in the past, with an August 25th deadline for submission to the county. The land bank would fall into this category because there is no related mill levy, and so there isn't a revenue neutral rate to exceed. The land bank budget hearing and adoption is proposed to be held during the August 9th regular city council meeting at 7 p.m. For the regular budget, if we plan to exceed the revenue neutral rate, there is a different required timeline that has an October 1st deadline for submission to the county. Be glad to answer any questions if I can.
Ben?
Yeah, I do have one question, and then I appreciate Kyle letting me borrow his stress ball while you go through that, because this one always, I think it's appropriate to follow what you recommended in the revenue neutral rate. So just out of curiosity, we've had several areas of growth over the last year in housing and in businesses. So follow this journey with me here. So we increase our revenue because of that. Let's say we reduce the mill levy by 1 mill. But if, because of the growth of our city, we have exceeded that revenue neutral rate, even though we have actually reduced the mill levy, would we still be required to have a revenue neutral rate hearing?
It's only if you're planning to exceed the R&R.
Yeah. So, yeah, my point just being is that even if we reduce the mill levy, if our revenue exceeded last year's numbers, we would still have to hold a revenue neutral rate hearing, which is because we're exceeding the amount spent last year.
Yes, because what the county does is they take our estimate, which would include the estimate growth. It's not final yet, but they would take that estimate, and since we're a growing city, our mill levy is going to go down. A shrinking city, it would go the other way. But our mill levy is going to go down. We don't yet know what that is because we don't have estimates yet. But if you exceed that,
I mean, this is also
same
posted.
dollars.
Yeah. So we could actually, just again in this, because of the growth and such, we could reduce the mill levy, but still be required to hold a notice to our citizens, costing the city money for
Refund.
I can't even spit this out because it frustrates me so bad. Bloated government at its worst, because we're being forced to tell these citizens that we're actually reducing their mill levy, but we're going to spend more money, and then to them, they get confused because it looks like a tax increase when it's actually the exact opposite. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but this is just the stupidity of this bill. The second part that I find interesting is actually the reason that we're dealing with this is not because of the city's business. It's not our fault. In fact, it falls upon, I mean, when people talk about the rate or the revenue being higher, there's 2 things that happen. One, we get more businesses or houses that increase our tax base. The second thing, our appraisals go up, and we see that happening right even this year. But oddly enough, according to the state legislature, it's actually their state property valuation organization or department within the state that sets the guidelines for how the county appraisers have to appraise houses and businesses. So if they really want to control the issue of spending, maybe they ought to look at their own house rather than trying to tell small business or small cities and municipalities how to do it. I'm done.
Okay. Any further comments? Charlie?
I don't have any other comments. I appreciate the calendar they put together, so I move to approve the 2023 budget calendar.
Okay. Jim?
I'd second that.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Move to item 7. Consider an ordinance repealing ordinance number 782-2007, establishing an employee benefits contribution fund for the Park City Public Library. Doug?
Mayor and council, this is an action based upon expression from the city council in past budget meetings that the council wished to discontinue the state legislative authorized mill levy up to 3 mills every year that could be levied by the city and then applied to the Park City Library Employee Benefit Fund. The city has done that in prior years, but again, the council has expressed a desire that they no longer go forward doing that. This repealing ordinance repeals the ordinance that under the state statute authorized the Employee Benefit Contribution Fund, and under which the city in past years has levied a mill levy of up to 3%. It's generally been a little bit less than that. And that ordinance is in front of you, and I'd answer any questions. There's a typo in the ordinance that'll be corrected. There's an extra 2 in section 1 there.
Tom?
We have two things here. The public approved 3 mills for the library, and that's what they bill every year, or as close to it as they can forecast. This is something that was added after that we pay the benefits. It was something that was an agenda item one night, and we passed it, and we've paid that over and above the 3 mills since. Is that what we're looking at getting rid of here?
This is the property tax levy authorized by the state statute.
Okay, so we're trying to get out from under doing their mill levy for them as part of our budget?
I'm not trying anything.
I can't get in my computer tonight, so I can't read it.
Okay, I'm not trying to do anything. I was informed by finance staff that the council had the desire to eliminate this funding of the employee benefit fund.
That's a pass-through for the 3 mills. There's a benefits package on top of that we've been paying.
That's correct. We can levy up to 3 mills for the regular library. There's actually 2 mill levies for them. There's the library and the library employee benefits. And so the library that's up to 3 mills, we're leaving alone. It's employee benefits, which at this point is 0.220 mills.
Which is over and above that. That's a separate entity.
Yes.
Right, and that's what I
They
want to
flow
clarify.
through us, so you see it in our mill levy total.
Right.
But yes, it's an in and out as far as the dollars go. We can receive the money into the penny, send it back to them, to the
We're not
library.
touching the 3 mills, we're only touching the 0.22.
Correct, correct.
That's what the item says, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify. Okay.
Very good. Tom, is that a motion?
No?
Ben?
I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve ordinance 1142-2022, and ordinance repealing ordinance number 782-2007, establishing an employee benefits contribution fund for the Park City Library.
Charlie?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This will be a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Charlie Davidson,
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salcetta,
Aye.
Kyle Nordick,
Aye.
Tom Jones,
Aye.
George Capps, Brandy Bailey,
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Move to item 8, discuss and consider approving updated guidelines for the fiscal year 2022 exterior grant program.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In December, Council appointed a subcommittee to review the exterior grant program and make recommendations as far as amending the guidelines to better address the needs of the community. The subcommittee recommended adding roofing, foundation repairs, privacy fencing, and whole house generators as eligible items to the program, while removing landscaping and construction of a new home. They also recommended the program only apply to those houses or properties that are more than 30 years or older. Last year, the exterior grant program received and processed a total of 18 applications totaling $107,720.39 in improvements, with the city contributing $20,514.99. Talking with Debbie earlier this afternoon, so far in 2022, we have received just 3 applications so far, but it's more than $70,000 in improvements, but the 3 combinations would max out the $2,500, so it'd be $7,500 to the city, but we're getting $70,000 in improvement. The FY22 budgeted amount for the homeowners incentive was $125,000, because if you remember, we have a total of 3 programs. We have the new home buyers incentive program, which has been approved but temporarily suspended. Then we have the exterior grant program. It was originally approved for $50,000. And then we have the exterior paint program, which $15,000 was approved for that. Staff recommends approval. There's a copy of the updated worksheet application in your packet. And if there's any questions, be happy to answer them.
Brandy?
Can you remind me again who was on that subcommittee?
So it was George Capps, Tom Jones, myself, and Ben.
Okay, so I guess maybe this question is for you guys then. How come we're going with 30 years and older?
That's just the number that we came up with, and after our discussions of it, we started with 20 and then went to 25 and then went to 30. We just felt like it better served the community on restoring older houses than newer. It's obviously the council's document, so if we want to lower it to 20, make that as part of your motion.
I guess I just think that, there are some homes that could be, 15, 20 years old that need some improvement, but we're gonna not allow them to benefit from this program when it really could benefit them and improve the look of their house or whatever. So I feel like, for me, I think 30 years is a little too old. I'd like to see it go a little younger than a 30-year-old home.
Okay. Ben?
I want to say thank you guys for working on this and through this there. When we talk about the age portion of it, I do tend to agree with that to some degree as far as that. I think the purpose of the program overall is to deal with houses, first off, that are, Park City is not a community that has 90, 100-year-old homes that are in great condition and things like that, where, we have, whether it's Riverside or places like that. All of our older homes, they'll generally fall in the same area and fall under the same category or socioeconomic, whatever it is. I can't talk tonight in class. And so the purpose being that this would aim more towards those that might have limited resources and limited abilities. And I think that's really the purpose. My understanding initially from when this was started a few years back was that was the purpose of the program, was to try to help those that just need that partnership, if you will. Whereas someone, for instance, but in my case, I would appreciate being able to use the program, but I don't need it, if that makes sense, to be able to do the work. It's nice to have around, but I think the purpose, I think, in going to that 30-year period was to make sure that we're hitting the target there. I would be, like I said, I do find myself a little bit more open to a little bit younger, but I wouldn't go under 25, probably.
Tom?
I was gonna say, that's what we were looking at, was when this initially started, it was paint for people that couldn't buy paint and things like that, and it grew out of that. But right now, you're looking at houses that are 30 to 75 years old that are living in that area, and the 30 years is 1992 and older. So you go 20, we're talking 2002 houses, and I don't know. we just drove a number of 30 years, and there's enough out there in the targeted areas, and all 4 wards have got houses that are in those age groups that need some help.
Randy, go ahead, you can respond. He was talking to you.
But I guess, for me, I can afford it, but what if what if I was able financially at one point to buy a house that maybe falls in that 15, 20 year, but now I'm on hard times and I really need to fix up my house and I can't afford it. So we're not gonna allow them, even though they can't, to help somebody who needs the help, just based because the age of their house? I just look at it more from the standpoint of, who can, and I get that it does need to be for people that need it financially and need the help, but it shouldn't matter the age of their house. If a house is falling apart, we should be able to help them if they can't afford to help themselves.
The only thing I would say, I think we gotta be careful, there's a fine line here of, this is an investment in the community that increases ad valorem taxes. So, I think we want to remain focused on that. It's an investment to bring back to us. Improves property values, improves neighborhoods, improves crime, improves different things like that. Charlie?
Two things. Number one, was there like a year cutoff before on this program or no?
No.
Oh, okay. I tend to agree with Brandy. I think, you're looking at inflation right now. You're looking at hard times for a lot of different individuals. I talked to a staff person earlier tonight that has a fence that's 26 years old falling down. Now, they may be able to afford it, and I would hope those that can afford it would, regardless of how old their house was, and that those that need the help would ask for the help, again, regardless of how old their house was. Now, I agree, I don't think we should do 5 or 10 years, but I would be supportive of a 20-year.
Okay. Randy, do you have something else?
Oh, no, I hit that one.
That's all right. George Glover.
Yeah, when I look at some of the things that were added, like foundation repair, I don't know if you guys have ever had any foundation repair. If you're looking at some of these homes, I don't know if there's a cutoff on the amount that you can give them to help them with the foundation repair. It could be several $1,000s. So I think that's something that we need to look at. If we're looking at 20, 25, 30-year-old, as far as what we're looking at. Is there a cutoff when we look at some of these added things that we can give them? Are we having a contractor go out and say, this is what it's going to cost to repair your home? So I would definitely look at that. I know for me, foundation repair was very expensive.
Yes, sir. The program outlines the fact that somebody's going to get, if they spend, the maximum percentage is, well, it doesn't change, it's 20%. So that way, if somebody spends more than $12,500, they're going to max out. The max limit of the grant is $2,500. The program does stipulate that we're not paying somebody for their own, it has to be third-party labor. So if somebody says, I have that skills and wherewithal and I'm just gonna do it myself and turn in a bill, well, then you're doing it on yourself. But it's for those individuals that don't have those skills and wanna hire a contractor to get things fixed and bring the value of their house. And primarily for the exterior grant program, it was originally proposed and approved to target certain areas in the community to bring them up and promote more community cohesiveness. So that's the reason why there was an age stipulation. And yes, there was great discussion and debate going back between 20, 25, and 30. So anyway.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing we changed was we put privacy fencing, just so it's specific to what type of fencing. The other thing too, I guess I want to say, and I know we've kind of going around, everyone's getting kind of second shots, but I want to make sure before a motion's made that I make my point on this. This was mentioned, and I really didn't think about it that much, but we talked about generators, which I think is great for someone to have a generator. I'd love to have a generator, but I'm just having second thoughts on that one. I'm just not sure that that really increases values in it, or it increases the neighborhood, whether it's the optics of the neighborhood or just the area. So I guess I would just want to throw that out there. George, you're done. Ben.
I haven't said everything clearly tonight, so I do want to be very careful though. And I agree very much with what John is saying, or the mayor's saying, in terms of the point of this program is a benefit, net benefit across the board to our entire community. That's the purpose of it, is to yes, help out individuals who do need that because of age of house and maybe the income issue. But it also, again, as John mentioned, it was the net benefit across for every taxpayer. So that's the thing I think that we keep as a forethought, or in the forefront of our thoughts, is that the purpose of this program is to be a net benefit to every citizen of the community. And if we get into charitable portions of that idea, then we run the risk of really turning into tax handouts at taxpayer expenses versus trying to actually help create and solve a problem. So while, yes, I do sympathize when we're talking about younger homes and situations that change or whatever the case might be, I do think it's important because we do have a number of organizations within our communities that do help people who do fall on hard times that might need to do these upgrades or different changes at the time. But that, I think, is a different mechanism that we're wanting to talk than what we're trying to deal with. And so I think we need to focus on what the purpose of the program was, and that's to, again, really stress the importance of, one, helping build that cohesiveness across our city, helping those who have older homes, fixed incomes, but also sees that net benefit there across the board. So I think the work that the committee did and the recommendations of the staff are good. And I would like to make a motion here that we approve the updated 2022 exterior grant program guidelines and allocating $50,000 to the program to be paid out of the general fund governing body department, excluding generators, and lowering the age to 25 years.
Okay, do we have a second? Tom?
No.
Do I have a second? Motion fails for lack of second. Charlie, or Tom?
I would make a motion, and my computer's down, so I can't read anything other than what I got right here. I'd make a motion that, to approve the updated 2022 exterior grant program guidelines and allocating $50,000 to the program to be paid out of the general fund of the governing body department as submitted.
Okay. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Got worse.
Jim?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 3. Okay, motion passes 4-3. Okay, very good. Good discussion. Moving on to item 9, discuss and consider a resolution for granting ad valorem tax abatements as an incentive for business development and expansion in Park City. Sean.
Yes, sir. Section 13 of Article 11 of the Kansas Constitution authorizes the governing body of any city to grant property tax exemptions for certain economic development purposes, otherwise known as EDX exemptions. And KSA 79-201 authorizes the governing body of any city to grant property tax exemptions for any property which is constructed or purchased with the proceeds of industrial revenue bonds, IRB exemptions. The state requires governing bodies to develop and officially adopt policies and procedures prior to granting such exemptions. And in 2013, the council passed Resolution 870-2013, which authorized and established the official policy and procedures for the city of Park City. The attached resolution amends the existing policy, and there's only, and I understand, sir, next time I'll provide a red line copy, but there's just 3 small changes to this one. One, it requires submittal of architectural renderings of the proposed building project and/or improvements. It outlines that staff may recommend certain design features or characteristics be included in the application for council's consideration in improving And then 3, it limits the maximum exemption allowed for exports outside the state of Kansas to 25%. The thought process behind this is, over the past couple months, there's been several discussions about updating design standards within the city, and that is a more long process that it's going to take. Something that will need to first formally be outlined and then go through planning and zoning and ultimately come before the council. But right now, we have several businesses come before the council looking for tax abatements for new development here in the city. What we're proposing is that would be the one area that council, you're giving out an abatement. You can have a little bit more say in that and say, hey, we understand that you're building this type building, but we would like you to include in that, if we're giving you an exemption or an abatement, we'd like you to include some design features. What we propose, and it will be brought before council ultimately before anything is done, but to give them a list of 7, 8, 9 different options that they could create, put awnings on a building, change the elevation of the building, change the articulation of the front facade of the building, any elevation that faces an adjacent right-of-way, so that way what the public normally would see. So that would be something, we would ask them to include a copy of their site plan and some renderings of those elevations so that we can, council can consider that when they're considering an abatement. As far as, again, it would outline staff would only recommend, staff does not dictate or anything, but it would be strictly for council's consideration in approving that. And then finally, right now, our current policy is based on 3 different tenets. One, how much is the capital investment does the project going to incorporate? How many full-time employees? And the last one is how much exports somebody does, and when they classify exports, it's outside the state of Kansas. So if somebody exports 100% of their business, they could receive upwards of a 50% exemption just because of that. I don't think that, my own personal recommendation is I don't think that it matters that much if somebody does business just outside our borders, so we kind of limited that to 25%. So if somebody did, it's on a 50% basis, so if somebody did more than 50% export business outside the state of Kansas, they would receive the maximum benefit of 25%. So those are the 3 changes. If you would like specifically in your packet, that is section 4, paragraph B, where it talks about includes, ensure newly constructed or renovated businesses include enhanced design characteristics that will ensure the taxing districts have the authority to levy. So there's one area that it was changed. And then subsequent to that, this is section 5, paragraph B, where it talks about the export premium. An additional exemption up to 25% shall relate to total sales volume exported outside the state of Kansas. And then the last one would be, this is section 7, paragraph D, subparagraph 2. Talks about the city administrator may make analysis of the cost benefit of such exemption. The next paragraph or sentence, depending on the site plan and architectural renderings provided, staff may also recommend certain design features or characteristics be included in the applications for council's consideration and approving. Those are the 3 areas that I changed. Happy to answer any questions, sir.
Thank you. Kyle?
Yeah, Mr. Administrator, I do have a question for you. So the way it kind of reads is you're going to be the one that will be reviewing the initial design concept, correct? And then be giving recommendations as to A through Z of modifications to those before it's being brought to council?
It will be staff.
It will be staff, okay.
Very seldom does any one person on staff. In this particular case, I'd be working with our building official, as well as our planning and zoning director, as well as the city attorney to kind of make recommendations.
Okay, so is there going to be like a process of appeals or anything? Like if you guys make recommendations to these business owners coming in and the business owners feel like those recommendations are unwarranted due to the area of town they're in, is there a process of appeals that those businesses can come here to council and say, you know, hey?
Well, ultimately, again, we would only make recommendations that project X, Y, and Z has proposed this, and they're looking for a 50% tax abatement. We have recommended, due to the size of their building, that they incorporate 3 different design features, A, B, and C. ultimately, there's no appeal because they are coming to council. Council either concur with those recommendations, or the developer's gonna say, if I do this, this, and this, I'm sorry, the project's no longer viable. There will be negotiating back and forth, but this would be the one area that council does have the authority right now, whereas design standards, we don't have that authority right now because it's not in them. It's not listed, so somebody can say, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do that. So it gives council more of a negotiating power when giving out abatements.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ben?
Yeah, two questions, and this one is not even related specifically to the recommended changes, but in section 7, letter A, filing and processing fees, is that our current amount? Do you know that 250?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, have we, and I don't know if this was updated as part of that, or is, says the fee may be adjusted annually, be consistent with the city's cost allocation plan. Have we reviewed that at any point recently to know if our fees are still in line?
No, sir, we have not.
Okay, do you feel that that is in line, or do you think that maybe it might be wise to look at that? Sorry to put you on the spot, I just was noticing it as I was reading through.
I think when we started reviewing the process last year on this, because council had said, hey, we need to take a look at this, and so we kind of benchmarked, and we were waiting on the city of Wichita to come out, because Wichita and Sedgwick County, they all correspond with each other. I believe their initial filing fee is $2,500, but there is nowhere else, other communities around that have that steep of an application fee. So this was relatively consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods that we benchmarked.
Okay. And I forgot my other question, so.
I will sit there and say, in addition to that, just going through the IRB process, the applicant is responsible for paying for the cost-benefit analysis. And then as far as any services provided by Gilmore and Bell and everything, the actual issuance of the IRB, the applicant's responsible for that as well, so.
You know a ballpark figure of what that is?
It depends on the size of the grant or the size of the bonds.
Any other discussion? Sean, I do have a question on this. So what we've added to this about kind of the requirements on buildings and stuff, well, I know we're working on site plan approvals for buildings and stuff. Will this be something that is gonna kind of coincide or be the same as? Or do you foresee this as being different than what we would implement later? I know this is, we're talking apples and oranges because this is IRBs, but you understand what I'm saying?
No, sir, I don't, because it's completely different processes.
Right.
Site plan review would be done by the Planning and Zoning Council. It could be determined at a later date that approval level could be done, remain at Planning and Zoning, or it could actually be elevated to council in the future. But the bottom line is if somebody's going to come and develop, it's not so much an extra requirement. The site plan has always been within this document. So providing a site plan. What hasn't been previously in this document is somebody going to the time and trouble and effort of providing elevation renderings. Show us an actual drawing of what you expect the business to look like on spot. So that way we can see what building materials, how it's going to be portrayed.
So do you see this as being, requiring more than design standards would later? Because we're giving IRBs?
No, sir, I do not. I expect that once we go through the process of updating design standards, that this would be matched or married.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, yes, sir. Sorry, I didn't
So it'd be
understand the
pretty
questions.
similar to what we're gonna require with design standards in the future.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That is what we are looking at right now.
perfect, that's what I was asking, thank you. Jim?
I think this is good discussion and a good change. So I would move to approve resolution 1116-2022 as a resolution for granting ad valorem tax abatements as an incentive for business development and expansion in Park City, Kansas.
Ben?
Yeah, I second for discussion because I remembered my question. So as a resolution, this goes through the whole process. It's what, 60 days we had to publish, or is that just for charter ordinances where we had to publish it before it goes into effect?
You do, there's a public notification process, and we have usually told most people throughout the IRB process that it's somewhere 45 to 60 days at minimum.
So do we have any right now that have started through this process or anything like that that would have an impact midway through?
We do not have any applications received yet that we wouldn't.
There's no
And
pending
I will sit there and
applications.
say this, one of the things that we want to make certain is we still want the city to be very competitive. So I have reached out to developers that have been before this council numerous times looking for IRBs and kind of explain that, hey, I'm shooting straight with you. Here's what I will be recommending to the council, and that may come forward. And so far, very supportive of it, understanding that, yes, we are looking to improve the overall presentation within the community. So it has been supportive, understanding that this will throw additional costs, but being mindful of that to the developer side of the house. So,
And I'm supportive of it. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have
Yes, sir.
anybody halfway through the pipeline or whatever that this would
no, sir.
throw off with that. Okay, perfect.
So effective, once this goes into effect, putting up just a square metal building would not fly. With no awning, no rendering, nothing like that.
If this were to go into effect straight from the get-go, we would take a look at it and say, you're required to provide an elevation. And then staff would look at it, and if we thought that there were recommended improvements that should be made to make it more cohesive and for the environment, yes, we would make those recommendations to council.
Mayor and council, don't forget you're in charge. And so if you don't like what staff's recommended, I think Kyle was kind of hitting on that earlier, ultimately you're making the discretionary decision whether to issue industrial revenue bonds and grant substantial tax abatements. And now you've been given the extra arrow in your quiver to say, before we consider that, we really want to look at what your building's going to look like, and staff's going to bring some things forward. But if it's a plain brown wrapped building and you love it the way it is and you want to grant the exemption, you're free to do that. This doesn't hamstring you in any way.
That's why I wanted to be very clear. We will only make recommendations that, hey, looking at this elevation, I think you could step it up a bit, incorporate some things that are developer-friendly, that are not going to cost a tremendous amount, but improve the overall quality and appearance of the building.
Good, it's a great start. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, move to item 10, discuss and consider options for the 2022 sidewalk connectivity plan. Simon.
So back in March of 2019, I think it's, okay, is that better?
Yes.
All right, back in March 2019, council adopted a pedestrian connectivity plan. It's a phased approach to connect existing sidewalks and to add hiking and biking trails when future development occurs. In 2021, Public Works began on sidewalk improvements around the basketball court at the intersection of Grove and Fairchild Street. We're still working on that. Hopefully we'll have that done before long. For 2022, staff is recommending the following options that are based off of Phase 1 of the pedestrian connectivity plan. Option 1 would be the northeast connecting sidewalk in front of the city administration building to the southeast corner of the 61st and Hydraulic. This proposal is for approximately 1,100 linear feet of 10-foot wide sidewalk and 4 driveway entrances. The estimated cost to build this section is $63,750. Option 2A is the southeast corner of Hydraulic to the north intersection of East Cedar Tree Street. This sidewalk proposal is approximately 1,800 linear feet of 10-foot wide sidewalk. There'll be about 4 driveway crossings and a crossing at Beaumont Street. The estimated cost before any drainage improvements, due to the open ditches and whatnot, Any needed right-of-way allocation and necessary fence relocation would be approximately $104,350. Option 2B is the southeast corner of Hydraulic to the north edge of the Pratt Industries property. This sidewalk proposal is for approximately 2,600 linear feet of 10-foot wide sidewalk. There'll need to be 4 driveway crossings and a crossing at Cedar Tree Street, Prairie Hill Street, and Beaumont Street. Estimated cost before any drainage improvements due to the open ditches, any needed right-of-way allocation, and any needed fence relocation is $150,750. So as far as the fiscal impact goes, we had $300,000 budgeted in Special Streets and Highway Capital Outlay Fund. $250,000 is budgeted for the road improvement plan. Another $50,000 is budgeted for the new sidewalks. We've already let one contract for the Hat McLean Park for the chip seal project, and we have another that is going out to bid tomorrow, actually, for the intersection of 61st and Jacksonville. It's estimated to be $300,000 by itself. Additionally, there's another $50,000 budgeted within the Special Street and Highway Fund for supplies and for maintenance and repair. However, those funds are generally reserved for day-to-day operations. The recommendation is as determined by the council.
Kyle. All right, Simon, let's talk numbers.
All right.
So you identified that, you know, the fund that you want to utilize is that Special Streets and Highways Fund, which we as a governing body said back in February, hey, let's allocate $300K to the 61st and Jacksonville intersection rehab. So automatically, out of the overall $350,000 we had in that, 300 of it's gone. We have 50,000 that's left, which you need for daily maintenance and repair.
Correct.
So then we get to today where we present 3 options, which are way exceeding $50,000. Does staff have any other funding recommendations or areas that this funds can come from that we can address these connectivity issues? It seems to be something that, I mean, I know we had a lady come and speak last meeting about it. It is an important thing. It's something that we all believe is somewhat important. And we'd like to see those improvements made, but there's just not the money there. So how can we do that?
That's correct. As far as the funding options, Sean, you can chime in on that because I really have no control of any of the other funds.
You did, you did.
I did. And yes, there's a couple different ways to look at it. You can look at it as one total pot of money to where he had $350,000. And in one evening, council approved just within the streets, $300,000 for the intersection and at the time, $122,000 for Hat McLean. We've gotten that bid back. We know that that is now less than $100,000. It's right at $98,000. But in that one evening, council went $400,000. They went above and beyond the Special Streets Fund and went ahead and dipped into unencumbered cash reserves to sit there and say that was important to us, we want to do more. That's one way of looking at it. It's that total pot of money mentality. The other side of it is you can sit there and say, you really went over because you only had $250,000 for streets and $50,000 was for sidewalks. You can still sit there and say, you got $50,000, you really went over in streets, but you still have $50,000. It's council's prerogative. The reason why we brought this forward to you is because of the fact we've heard guidance from council that, hey, sidewalks are important, sidewalks are important. We've had residents come and speak before this. We've had council members talk about these exact same segments of road that it's important to us to get from Hydraulic all the way down towards 53rd Street. You are correct. We do not have enough money in the budget to do any one of these projects. The option number one is the $60,000 one. That's about as close as we could get to the $50,000 that was identified in the original budget passed for 2022 for sidewalks. It's still $10,000. And it's up to council to say either unencumbered cash reserves, MTBE funds, or, well, we're going to hold off on that because we exceeded roads. It's a matter of setting priorities, and that's up to the council.
Okay. Is sidewalks like this, I mean, is this something that we could take a look at when we're developing our CIP program to identify how much money is in there and maybe start putting these bigger sidewalk programs like this into it?
That would be most appropriate, sir, because the connectivity plan is designed for 10, 15, 20-year process, and the whole entire price tag of the whole entire connectivity plan would be a rather large CIP ask. That is correct.
So how does that work in terms of like making motions and authorizing it to go into the CIP versus authorizing the initiation of the project? Can council make the motion to put it into the CIP and then bring it up at a later date to have it initiated?
When we get to that point, now that we just recently, within last week, received the final report on both water and wastewater and everything, we now starting our, we already had this plan associated. We had other plans that we were waiting on to sit there and come up with an overall capital improvement plan. There will be a list of priorities in each particular categories, which are priorities 1 through 10 for facilities, which are priorities 1 through 10 for sidewalks, for streets, for stormwater drain. Then it goes through the whole process of public planning and zoning, because they're going to make a recommendation, and then it ultimately comes to council to sit there and say, what is the true priorities? You're going to have a list of 20 things, and you're going to try and say, okay, for the next 5 years, here are the things that we do want to accomplish.
Thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
Tom?
I have a concern. This is part of our plan that we developed a few years ago with WAMPO. We paid to do a study, and
In
this
2019,
sidewalks, both
yes.
of these sidewalks are in that plan.
Yes, sir.
Both of them could be funded through WAMPO if we turn the proposal in. My concern that I'm seeing here, and I think hydraulic needs a sidewalk, but you're probably picking the most disastrous area to work on to put a 10-foot wide sidewalk. And are we taking the concrete wall down to put it in?
Yeah, I believe that concrete wall would have to be removed, either that or the storm drain would have to go underground.
So we're gonna
make
take
room.
several hundred feet of 6
Right.
foot or 8 foot concrete, 6-foot wall?
I think it'd probably be better just to actually close in the ditch and do a curb and gutter system with the underground storage or a storm system, because the amount of room, you're just kind of lacking. But
Anything we do along there, if we leave the wall up, it's gonna undermine the footing if we do any cutting or anything else. And then we've got the ditch right there, so there's no way a 10-foot sidewalk would go through there. And that fits federal highway guidelines for money for sidewalks, if it's 10-foot wide.
Yes, sir, there is. And the connectivity plan that was passed in 2019 did not indicate whether it be the east side of the road, west side of the road. To me, there is more right away already on the west side of the road, and it may make sense to get it farther south of the senior center and then transition and go across at Beaumont and then go a little bit farther down. This is very preliminary just to figure out, council, what is our guidance and direction, because we're trying to implement a plan that this council approved back in 2019 that said, okay, here's what we need to work towards.
I agree with that. I just think that throwing this one out there and saying we'd like to get it funded and do it, we're biting off a chunk here. And we don't even know what we're gonna do with the road. At some point, we're gonna have to do something with the road. And are we gonna tear that out after, somewhere down the road as traffic picks up?
I would sit there and say, yes, it would make sense that if there were going to be improvements made to hydraulic within the next 5 to 10 years, that we would just wait and do it at that time period. But again, people want sidewalks.
I
They're good
understand.
for the,
But my dilemma is that we put a sidewalk in, and then we go through all this headache of getting dirt in there and building culverts in and everything else, and then 5 years later, we come in and tear it all out and put a road in.
Yes, sir.
Because it's in the wrong spot,
Sounds like you're not in favor of option 2B.
I think we need a sidewalk down through there, but I think if you look at the lay of the land, we got some problems going through there. So we're gonna be either buying a lot of concrete pipe and putting it in all the way down along there so we can level it out, or we ain't got room for a 10-foot sidewalk. And then we've got, 2 city blocks of concrete, 6-foot fence that
what we
we've
do
gotta
have
deal with.
room for, though, ample room for is option 1, so.
If you want to look at it and bring it back, I'm not ready to say we ought to do that tonight, is my problem. There's an elevation issue with the road, and that fence is above everything else, so it's higher, so. And it just goes like this right after.
I know. Charlie?
Excuse my ignorance here, just help me understand. So if we approved option one tonight, you're saying from the Hap McLean Park and the 61st in Jacksonville, we would have to dip in the 63,000 into the unreserved cash funds? Is that what you're saying? Am I correct on what I'm thinking? Sir. Okay, thank you, that's all I had. I just want to clarify
Ben.
that.
Yeah, and we've already done that with the roads, because we've already exceeded the $300,000 that we allocated by adding in Hap McLean. So, yeah, there's a precedent set, whether we like it, want to stick with it or not. But, so there are three options. So option 2B, we don't, I mean, if that's not the route we want to go, we don't need to bring it back unless we really want to look at spending $150,000 plus there. But both what Councilman Jones brought up, and then of course staff, is the issue of the possibility of the road expanding along Hydraulic. I mean, that is a heavily used street, plus with expansion of different areas there, and the downtown area could become an issue that gets addressed, and then we've spent X amount of dollars on a project that we're going to tear up, basically. I think addressing both to what Kyle said is in looking at CIP and pushing this back down the road as far as options 2A and 2B would be, as we look at a CIP plan, is maybe examining, are there other ways in which connectivity can happen between those areas to town or to our main centers without using that spot right there. I understand it was part of the plan in 2019 that was passed, but times have changed and adjustments have been made, and maybe it's best to look and see if there's other ways and other routes for something like that to happen. Because we do want to make sure that we have walkability and, you know, whatever other sorts of transport that people decide to use. But I think it's important to make sure we study it out, because obviously looking at that, this doesn't seem to be as well planned out in terms of just realizing that the $100,000 or $150,000 is going to require much more than that. That's just a little portion of it. So I'm a big proponent that we've said for 3 years now we want to focus on sidewalks, and we've allocated money in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. And now in 2022 for sidewalks, and we spent, last year we did the ADA portions. I can't recall right offhand on 2019 or 20 what we did, or if we did there. But it seems like if this is a priority, it's something that we should want to tackle, but I think it still goes back to spending responsibly. And Kyle made it very clear, we've already spent our $300,000 that was allocated. So I guess I don't know where I fall necessarily on this. I think option 1 is a great option, because I think it would provide a good resource. But at the same point, when you spend out of the bank, you only got so much bank to go back to.
Okay, I would agree with Ben. I mean, I think option 1 would be more of a shovel-ready project, but now finding funding is another. Jim?
I'm in favor of option 1 myself also. It needs to be tackled within budgets we set out, and my opinion is the 50,000s for this, and that we had allocated in the overages on the streets. This is fairly close to the 50,000, and we need to start on it. I mean, we've been talking about this quite a while, so we need to start chipping away at these sidewalks. That's all I have.
The only thing is that the 50,000 that we budgeted for, we actually used on that 61st Street project, so we really don't.
I was referring to what Sean was saying, is we kind of, yes, we used it, but we could also view that whether we're dipping into the excess for that project or this project. My mind is that it's available for this, and we went over on the previous project.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Tom?
I agree with Jim on 61st Street. We need both projects, but the one is, I think there's a lot of dollars there that we don't see when you start trying to put pipe in the ground and get it leveled up and get sidewalk in there. Just look down there on 53rd Street. That's $200,000 to fix the ditch down there. and we're not even talking about sidewalk. 61st Street, looks like there's enough setback here where the thing's drawn in. If we wanted to go in and do anything with 61st Street in the future with widening to 3-lane or whatever, it's there. And so I'm with Jim. I think option one, if we're gonna do something today, is the right thing to do, to get that connected.
Agreed. George Glover.
Yeah, I did get some resident concerns on what they'd like, and, you know, I listened and just hear what they have to say. And one of the residents sent me an email about feeling disconnected. Now, this is 2A and 2B on both sides of the road. Cedar Tree, about walking on the grass, and why isn't there sidewalks there? And that was a concern of theirs. They don't see the connectivity between where they're at and Park City as far as the connectivity. And that would provide that. I think that's a concern. For all the residents that we have, we serve the residents, and I would, if we don't have the money now, I mean, we've kind of spent what we have, is to look at it to how can we address some of those citizen concerns, and I think it's a legitimate one. I wouldn't want to walk on the grass. We just don't have a lot of sidewalks here, but I think to address the concerns of the citizens and not what I want, I think we ought to go with either 2A or 2B. Thank you.
With 2A and 2B, I mean, you mentioned the underground sewer and stuff like that. That's obviously not added into this cost.
That is not, I don't have a cost estimate on that stuff, but I do want to remind the council that we are getting quite a bit of 10-foot wide sidewalk through the 61st Roundabout project that we're doing at 61st and Broadway. They're taking 10-foot sidewalk all the way from Prospect and bringing it into the new bridge over there by AirCap. So there's going to be quite a bit of new sidewalk going in and walkability going in that area of the town that's not part of what we had budgeted.
Thank you. Jim?
Somebody mentioned this earlier. I'd be interested in learning about an option, another option, which was just, there's got to be some benefit to doing this in a large quantity. If you came in and did every sidewalk in the city, and that was on the list, and we talked about financing it through bonds, how much would that be and what would that look like? That's a pretty major project, but rather than trying to tackle it through the budget, get it done. And you might attract a bigger contractor that would do it cheaper per foot, per linear foot. I don't know, it may be a terrible idea, but I'm interested in understanding more about it.
Ben?
I think that was a good idea, Jim. I like that, that thought, just in general. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing with the water side as well. So going back, and sorry, I'm going to cross off here a little bit. So back to the 61st and Jacksonville portion of this that we've mentioned here a little bit. We talked about, you know, right now I thought we had a bid at $300,000 to do that, but it sounds like you're saying we still need to get a bid.
So we have a cost estimate from the contractor to perform that work, and it's right at $300,000, just shy of $300,000. However, we had to get our bid documents and specifications in line to align with our procurement policy. So we've got all that done. I actually received the bid documents this evening, and tomorrow morning I'll send those out and get those published.
Because I think one thing important just to talk about in the terms of just this whole flow of things is in that 61st and Jacksonville street project plan, that does not cover going almost to 135 where that massive speed bump is that realigns your car, correct?
No, it doesn't.
No. So, I mean, part of, in all this thinking and all this spending that we've done or considering, Jacksonville, first 61st and Jacksonville is very important, but part of the actual gateway into the city is that turn right off of that. And we didn't even address that in our spending of our streets. And so, I mean, like I said, I think there's a lot to this whole picture that we're not tackling or getting through. We're finding, as Jim mentioned, kind of piecemealing at different areas. But that 61st and Jacksonville, we left a big portion off right there. Not in terms of size, but in terms of importance. So even with these, I think it'd be good to look and get a better picture all the way around. And my recommendation would be, and I'm going to go ahead and just make a motion here on this, that we actually take no action on the recommendations that have been presented.
Brandy was next up. Do you want a second?
No.
Okay, hold on just a second then. Was somebody second? Kyle?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, Brandy?
What was the approximate unencumbered cash? Can you remind me that dollar amount?
300,000, wasn't it? 1.3 million.
Are you referring to the excess amount that I emailed out? It's $1,320,000.
And then, so the excess of our street project, we've taken essentially how much out of that?
It'd be approximately 200,000.
Okay. And then, do you know the approximate balance of the MTB fund?
787,000. Wow. Approximately.
Approximately.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
3-3? 4-3-4? Raise your hand if you're for it.
The motion?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Motion passes 4-3. Did you get who was against it? Okay. Okay. Moving on, item 11. Discussion, consider options for 2022 park improvements. Simon?
So during the April 4th, 2022 Parks Committee meeting, we discussed various options on how to upgrade our parks. During the 2022 calendar years, our hopes were to replace the aging playground equipment at Jardine Park, to replace 3 of the shelters at Hat McLean Park, and, 2 at Hat McLean Park and 1 at Jardine Park. And with the ever-increasing rate of inflation, we're seeking the council's direction as to what you would like to see accomplished. Based on the assessment, there are 3 options that I'm going to present to you for consideration. And option 1, we currently don't have a master plan for the parks. Option 1 would be to create a RFP to receive bids to perform the work necessary to create a comprehensive plan for the future of our parks. Option 2, Jardine Park lacks a parking lot. This option would be to make improvements to the lot at 6220 North Independence, which is allocated to construct a parking lot some time ago. Estimated cost to perform the construction of this parking lot is approximately $50,000. Option 3, replace the 2 existing shelters at the community center and 3 shelters at Hat McLean Park with 21-foot grain bin gazebos. Estimated cost to replace the 5 shelters with grain bin gazebos is approximately $51,000. As far as the fiscal impact is concerned, $37,500 for buildings and an additional $15,000 for machinery and equipment was budgeted in the general fund parks budget. The $37,500 was budgeted to replace the 3 shelters, and the $15,000 was to replace the aging playground equipment at Jardine Park. This is up to your recommendation, and I've attached 2 documents, one with that shows that lot at 6220 Independence, and the other with the grain bin gazebo, and I'll stand for any questions.
Kyle?
Yeah, Simon, you and I talked after that meeting, and I think I made it pretty clear about my position on master plans. I believe as a city, as we grow, it's very important that we have a clear and concise vision of that growth and a direction, and I think a master plan would help out not only our city, but the park board to make recommendations to come before for funding. you know, with that, there is always the costing portion of it, you know, how much does a master plan cost? I know that when I wrote up the one for LW Clapp Park, you know, that's a couple $1 million that the city of Wichita sunk into their contract and everything. Do we know kind of how much a master plan would cost on this basis? And whether or not that master plan would include all parks and open spaces in the city or just one specific area are we going to target at a time?
Yeah, so we've reached out to multiple cities about the RFP process on their master park plans, and we received a lot of RFPs. I've got half a dozen or more of them. However, the cost of those, I have not received a cost of what it cost for those cities to have that work performed. As far as our parks are concerned, we have 3 parks that are, well, at least 2 of them that are major park systems, which is probably the Grove Parks Complex, which consists of multiple parks, and then, of course, Hat McLean, which is our flagship park of the city. Jardine Park is also a pretty regularly used park, and we have a few smaller ones throughout town. As far as RFP would go, I would highly recommend doing at least the Jardine Park, Grove, and Hat McLean within that master study.
Okay, well, with that, I mean, it would be my recommendation, obviously, upon you guys. I would like to see us move forward with the master plan, not only for parks, but parks, open spaces, and to identify areas of recreational programs where the city may be lacking.
Brandy?
So Kyle asked my first question. So my second question is, on option 3, the 21-foot grain bin gazebos. So it says we're replacing 5 shelters. So that would be getting 5 gazebos? Or is it
Yes, that's correct.
5 grain bin gazebos for each
Right.
shelter? Okay, I just wanted a clarification.
Tom?
I like the idea of doing a master plan too. But moving past that, option 2, when we blocked off the driveway to get back into that park, we told the people down there we were gonna put a parking lot in. And I've had a couple of them talk about cars pulling in there at night in the dirt and stopping and sitting back in there, and there's no real parking lot there yet. And I think we ought to be taking care of that before we go building something else. The third item on the gazebo, grain bin, I like those, but that's not an approved product for Park City. The siding's not legal here, so I don't think you can have sheet metal siding on something like that in our planning and zoning codes. I'd love to have one in my backyard, but it doesn't fit the neighborhood, so.
I'm unfamiliar what you're referencing, sir.
Oh, the sheet metal siding, which would be like a tin siding on that. The other thing is, we're gonna take some gazebos that hold more people under, or the shelters, than these 2 too. I'm sitting there looking at a 21-foot grade bin. That one shelter in the main park, there's
It's 12 by
50, 60
20.
people under that thing at the 4th of July Festival. They won't fit in this. But I think what I'm saying is aesthetically, the siding, it's kind of like storefronts and stuff. We want to we need to change our processes if we're going to allow these and allow them in other places. The metal siding.
Yes, sir, I'm not certain if you're referring to something as far as, and we can verify the codes, whether you're referring to something that is a permanent living structure versus a shelter structure. Again, I'm not familiar to where.
I believe that you're going to find out that this would not be an approved siding for a building in Park City. And we're going to put a gazebo out there with a siding on it, so. But the other thing with these 2 is we're going to restrict how those are used, because everything we've got now is open-sided, and these are potentially going to have sides at the lower levels.
Can you put back up the gazebo, please, on the screen? So the gazebo that we're looking at is similar to that, but it's not quite like that.
I may be wrong then. I'm looking at this picture.
Right.
Yes, sir, and we apologize for that because as Simon had mentioned, just the cost of inflation. When we originally proposed this a year ago, we had tentative bids to where somebody had indicated it'd be between $12,000 and $15,000 for a structure that we were looking at. The latest bids that we, just even casual conversations, is more like $35,000 per shelter. Looking at alternatives, not something that is inexpensive, but something that still maintains or has a little charm and character. So this concept had been mentioned previously in other council meetings and talked about it, and so we found a company out of Oklahoma that provides these. And this one right here is what they call their deluxe model, that it has the little bar rail and it's actually sided around the bottom and everything, but they do make them anywhere from 9-foot diameter all the way up to 30-foot diameter. The 30-foot diameters require custom 15-week lead time. 21-foot diameter they had in size. We kind of looked at our shelters being 12 by 20 right now. 21-foot diameter is actually a larger footprint than 12 by 20. And without the skirting around the side, we would probably contract to have the concrete poured separately to where the concrete apron could be 2 to 3 feet larger than the actual structure itself. And it is a little bit eclectic, unique. We know part of the reason why we had even made this recommendation is because in this year's budget, there are going to be improvements made to the community center. And part of that includes making like a tin wainscot in that building because it has flooded before and there's no sense in putting sheet. So it went with the whole entire theme. So that's what we're looking at.
Where I was coming on siding, sheet metal on the side is not approved siding for me to put something like that in my backyard, I don't believe. I need to check on it, but I'm trying to go from memory.
Okay.
And you're also, that picture, I'm looking at it be restrictive on getting in and out of it and stuff. Maybe you don't do the bottom half of it, I don't know, so. Anyway.
Ben?
Yeah, so, again, kind of carrying on from our previous conversation on the last agenda item, I think option 2 is necessary because that was part of the whole plan from 2019 when we went through talking about Jardine Park. And again, we did block off any sort of access for parking. So for people to utilize that, they're parking all on the streets, and we all know that those streets in those areas are not wide. So it's actually probably, this is just a guess, so don't hold me to it, but I would actually think that Jardine has become less usable just simply for the fact that there's no easy access in for people to utilize it and to park and such. So I mean, I think that's something that we do need to tackle and take care of. That said, within what we have in the budget and what the cost is, it technically falls in that amount, but that takes out the $15,000 that we have to replace aging equipment at Jardine Park. What is staff's thoughts or recommendations concerning the equipment that needs to be replaced there and prioritizing it with the parking lot, but also knowing that number 1 is a big necessity?
Right, so we priced playground equipment to just try to see what we could get now for our playgrounds. And to do a small playground kit set up for smaller kids, it would be approximately $50,000. I mean, on the bottom end.
That's 50, not 15, right?
That's right, 50,000, yes, 50. And that's not an all-inclusive park for all ages. You're talking like, it would be 2 to 5 year olds for that price. And I think that the higher number of people using that park are probably teenagers, I would think.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jim?
What's the park board think about that grain bin structure? I'm not a cosmetic person, that's not my strong point, but that's not very attractive to me.
Well, I think the Parks Committee is more in favor of doing the master plan to develop a future as far as awnings or shelters that are similar throughout the entire city, and playground equipment that we could kind of match different play areas, different parks with kind of similar looking playground equipment and amenities. So I think the Parks Committee is more interested in the master plan.
Okay.
Kyle?
Yeah, with that, I'd like to make the motion to move forward with option one of the establishing a master plan, an RFP, master plan for parks, open spaces, and recreation.
Ben?
I'm going to second that for discussion just real quick. I fully support this. I would like to say, though, that I would like to see us address the Jardine parking as we move forward into 2023 and making sure that we're allocating for that. Because again, I think that's important. I know that that can come in as part of the master plan, but I think that's something that's important that we have talked about that is a need.
Just remember that we set our budget calendar, so put that in your mind. Tom?
I was going to say, I agree with the master plan. I think we do need to work on item 2, too, so, the parking lot.
All right, very good. Well, I'll kind of tail on what Jim said. I'm not a very artsy person, and I've been told I don't appreciate art, but I'm really not a fan of these. I think they're a cool place to have them, but I'm just not sure that it's the parks. And I would also weigh in and say that I do think the shelters at the parks are in bad need of being replaced. And that's probably something that we need to find as well. I think the tin that's on those now is looking pretty rough. So I don't know if it's something we could refresh what we have or just basically build a new one next to it and then remove those.
Right, I've looked at all the awnings in the parks myself, and a lot of them are leaning really bad. They all are in the need of replacement, complete replacement. It's just that time.
Matter of fact, as windy as it was today. Okay, very good. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item 12, discuss and consider agreement with professional engineering consultants to create an ARCGIS account and provide training. Simon.
Back earlier this month, Wilson and Co-Engineering presented their reports on the water and wastewater studies. One of the recommendations discussed was establishing a GIS account database and populating it with the city's infrastructure. The attached agreement outlines creating an ArcGIS account, populating it with a map created by Wilson and Co-Engineering, and providing training for the staff. ArcGIS is the same programming that Sedgwick County uses. Utilizing the software that Sedgwick County uses will reduce the cost and time necessary to create the base mapping for the city and all the right-of-way and easements. This mapping software can be updated in real time. And the public can see it as we add the new utility lines or modify or remove them from the system. If you go on our website right now, you can see our water and wastewater maps from 2016, I believe. With this ArcGIS, it would create a link where they could click on it and they could see that map in live time. So as we, much like Sedgwick County GIS, which I think probably a lot of you have accessed, you could see as you buy a piece of property and it changes with your name. This would do the same. It would change with our maps and not with somebody's name, but you'd see our new lines because our city is growing super fast. This purchase is unbudgeted. We'll utilize the utility fund water and the utility fund sewer to pay for it at a cost of $4,500. There's a minimum cost associated with this of $500 per year, which will include one user account, and PEC will manage that account as the administrator. And we'll need at least one field worker profile, which is $350 a year, and a viewer profile, which is $100 a year. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, just a question, Simon, if this is approved, do we have a time frame of when this will be live?
I'll be meeting with PC later this week on this, actually. I don't think it'll take very long. So we've already began the discussion with Wilson. They've created the files to transfer into this ArcGIS already. I figure 30 days max, probably, to get this going.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just for clarification, this isn't what we talked about in our special meeting last week of adding GIS coordinates of manholes and water lines and everything. This is the account.
This would be creating the account, that's correct. We still need to go through and survey in these points. We've been in talks with KRWA, the Kansas Rural Water Association. They have a program where they'll come out and actually survey everything with the survey grade down to like 4-inch accuracy. I think the cost is $40,000 per utility, but I'm not 100% sure on that yet. I'm still gathering data. Hope to have that pretty soon. But we are looking at buying a survey instrument ourselves to have in-house where we can start shooting in some of these manholes, some of the valves in the water system, meters, different types of locations that we could use to shift those lines and make them a little bit more accurate.
Okay, just to follow up on that question. So by doing this and spending this money, what is the next step? Because when Wilson was here, they were saying about $40,000 to be on board, have all of our stuff GIS'd. What's next after this?
So this would be the first step of the process. We got to create the account. So we're creating the GIS account. Second step would be either hiring a firm to come in and survey in everything to bring the accuracy to the new maps. That could be a combination of in-house versus KRWA, whatever the case might be, but this is the first step of that process.
So the next step would be about $40,000 to get them all scanned in?
Per utility, $80,000 total.
Okay. Randy?
Simon, when you were talking, when you were talking about everything here, so it's $4,500 total, but then did you say there was an additional $500 per year for an administrator?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's a fee that's going to be associated with that every year, and it's going to be $500 plus at least one $350 field user fee profile. That way we could get in there, we could add new maps as they come in or add information as it comes in.
And you said Wilson would be the administrator?
No, PEC. PEC will be the
PEC will be the administrator. Do you think that maybe we should also look at having someone from Park City be an administrator on that account just for future?
We could always add another, we could add another administrator in the future if the need came. Really what the administrator is going to do is if we have new, say like a pressure reducing valve, we want to add that to our map. They're going to create that component where I could add a PRV into our mapping system, or a VFD. I like to say that word, Ben. The VFD to the mapping system. That's what their role is going to be, to add those components to where we can incorporate them into our mapping system.
But is that something that we could do on our own?
Sure, yeah, if we had a GIS specialist, we could.
Okay.
Jim?
I like this. This is a great step in the right direction. So I would move to approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with PEC to create an ARGIS account and provide training in the amount of $4,500 to be paid out of the utility fund sewer department.
Ben?
Yeah, sorry.
Hold on. It'll have to be a combination between the two. I'm sorry, it doesn't say it in the first sheet. It'll be a combination between the utility fund water and the utility fund sewer for the payment.
Okay, so to revise is just the last statement of that: utility fund sewer department and utility fund water department. Okay.
Right.
Ben?
Second, for discussion, just real quick here. So in doing this and talking about the $80,000 that we're looking, obviously if we're gonna spend the $4,500, we're gonna spend the $80,000 ultimately, otherwise there's no point in doing this. Can you kind of give an overview of the cost savings that this brings about as well? Because I think that's, since we're talking unbudgeted funds, I think we need to, I know there is gonna be a benefit, but if you could just for the record.
Yeah, absolutely. So, generally when we have a water leak, we don't really know where our valves are. So the response time to those leaks is slowed down dramatically because we have to find where the water valves are. And that tends to be problematic. So we're losing a lot of water. There's a cost associated with that. If we mismark a line, a lot of lines we just don't know where they're at. there's a huge cost associated with that, with having to hire somebody to come in because there was a utility line that was hit. There was a change order that we just did not too long ago at Newcastle because we don't know what the water system's doing. And we actually found a water line that goes north out of there that's not on the map. But it's not gonna be perfect right away. I don't wanna give the false illusion that it is gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be better than what we have. And it's gonna be something that we could build on, and it increases the transparency of what we have in the ground, forever.
This 85,000 plus continual cost is gonna pay for itself quickly.
Absolutely.
Across the board, so thank you.
All right, we've had a good discussion. Motion and a second's been made. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Item 13, discuss and consider a contract with Wilson and Company Engineering to design the main lift station variable frequency drive, the VFD relocation.
During the summer of 2021, it became abundantly clear that the building where the variable frequency drives, or VFDs as they're commonly called, cannot be adequately temperature controlled. Nor could the humidity be controlled. As the temperature exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the air conditioning unit could not keep up with the VFD, and the VFD is overheated. My staff, we installed a larger air conditioner and fans to try to prolong the relocation of the VFDs, but the temperature and humidity conditions persist. One of the VFDs actually kind of blew up a few months ago and needs to be replaced. The cost of replacing that one VFD alone, if I was to put it back in the same location, it was estimated to be about $18,000 to $20,000. So I contacted some local contractors to try to find a viable and long-term solution and to create specification on how to resolve this issue. And as part of the recent water and wastewater study conducted by Wilson and Co. Engineering, we looked over the situation and have determined that the best alternative for long-term and cost-effective means of correction is to install the new VFDs at the location next to the main lift station wet well. So this will be a system that is pretty much identical to what we have at the new 53rd Street lift stations. The VFDs are outside. They have a little covering that goes over them, and they have a little mini split that keeps them cool. But it completely isolates it from that building that is kind of problematic. There will need to be engineering done to ensure that all electrical is relocated and the VFDs are installed correctly. This proposal includes the design, the bidding services, and the construction-related services. The end result will be similar setup at the new 53rd lift station. Wilson and Co. Engineering is the firm that designed that lift station. So it'll pretty much be directly in line with what we already have for that new system. Of course, this purchase is unbudgeted. It'll be paid utilizing the utility fund sewer at a cost not to exceed $27,500.
Staff recommends approval.
I recommend approval, of
Ben.
course.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with Wilson and Company Engineering to design the main lift station variable frequency drive, AKA VFD, relocation in the amount of $27,500 to be paid out of the utility fund sewer department.
Thank you. Kyle?
I'll second it for discussion. I do have one question, Simon. When talking about construction services, is this actually going to be doing the construction work, or is this going to be a construction consultant for a later construction bid to happen?
Correct. This will go out to bid, much like the 53rd Street lift station did. They'll create all those bid documents, and we'll send them out to bid, and there'll be a bid opening, and then I'll present that to council when that comes. And then the construction-related services will probably include some of the inspection and the any kind of design or change order information that might come up.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Tom?
Well, I'm trying to remember, but I got a question. When they built that lift station, they brought the power lines out to that old building. And I believe the power is to that old building. So will you try to go back up to where the actual block is and you're gonna put the house there like the other one's already sitting there? There's a little lean-to thing there.
Yeah, so all the power will be removed from that building. We have to relocate it. I think it's 480 volt. I think, I'm pretty sure that the generator that's there, we're gonna try to reuse it, but it'll have to be relocated as well. There's an antenna out there where it communicates with the 53rd Street lift station and CCUA. It will have to be relocated. There's gonna be quite a bit that has to be done to do this. The end result is, hopefully, next year in the 2023 budget, we'll be able to remove that building and actually bring that back to natural ground. It's an unsafe situation. The whole bottom 2 floors of that building are underground. They're all full of water. It's just, it's a safety issue, and we're just trying to eliminate it.
Okay, well, my thing is, I was trying to think that, I know when those were put in, they were sensitive, and they were really wanting to keep them cool and stuff like that, and you're gonna be sitting them out in the sun, and have they done some kind of a process to that?
Yeah, so those VFDs were installed 20 years ago or something, I think.
15.
Yeah, so the new VFDs don't run as hot as those did back in those days. They're a lot more efficient. But the unit, the little lean-to that they have out on 53rd at that new one, there's actually a mini split unit in that keeps those cooled. And then if there's a failure on it, it notifies us that there's an overheat situation. But the VFDs run so much cooler than they used to be. It's not, it's a precaution, but I don't know if it's necessary most of the year.
Okay, I'm good. I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing something here, so, okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Go to item 14, consider agreement with the city of Wichita regarding the de-annexation from Wichita and annexation by Park City of certain industrial property located south of 61st Street North and west of the Wichita Flood Control Canal. Doug.
Mayor and council, this is an agreement for your consideration. It involves a kind of a triangle of land that is in the city of Wichita. In this larger property, the yellow involves the property that we're talking about in the agreement, but that residential area to the west is also part of that general triangle that's in the city of Wichita, but surrounded by the city of Park City. The owner of the property that's outlined in yellow has approached the city of Park City with the desire that we help him to develop that as industrial property. He's had no luck with the city of Wichita, kind of for 2 reasons. One, they have no ability to extend infrastructure for the development of the land, most importantly. And then secondly, they have kind of limited desire or no desire to provide any economic incentives like IRBs. So the proposal has been that the city of Wichita would de-annex the property, and then the property could be annexed by the city of Park City consensually. The de-annexation is not a very lengthy or difficult process that would be undertaken by Wichita. And annexation at that point by Park City, when it had been de-annexed, would be just the simple ordinance that would be adopted after receiving consent from the property owner. Wichita, however, as the price of de-annexing the property, has asked that they be paid by the city of Park City on an annual basis 20% of the ad valorem taxes collected and received by Park City. And that's in fact what this rather short agreement provides.
Jim.
Okay, so I'm all in favor of annexing this and bringing them into Park City, but I don't think there's any way in the world I could support giving up 20% of the tax on this property with no end date for perpetuum. So if we did an IRB or with tax incentive to have it developed, use local dollars to do that, and then have to give up 20% of the taxes 10 years from now or 100 years from now, this seems like a terrible idea. So I think I don't know if that's city of Wichita's terms or whatever, but that's not reasonable.
Okay. Ben.
I concur. I think that's a bad deal when we're talking about in perpetuity. on that existing lot. The other question I have, looking at it and seeing it from here, so we're talking about zoning it industrial, obviously, because we'll be looking at industrial revenue bonds. That looks like, I mean, now granted, it's City of Wichita residents, but still, it looks like there's an established neighborhood right there. Does this go against some of the issues that we've had even in the last few months and years when we're talking about establishing an industrial zoning area next to residential?
I think it's already zoned industrial.
Yes.
It is already, okay.
Yeah, there would be no
Okay.
zoning that I'm aware of.
Okay, that answers that question then, but I do agree with Jim. I don't think that doing this at 20% forever is a smart idea, and I would not support that.
Charlie?
I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, but I concur. I do not, I don't like it without some sort of sunset clause. Maybe, perhaps if there's, is this something the city of Wichita presented, Doug, or do you know? The 20%?
Yeah, this came from them. Sean negotiated with them.
The individual property owner had been trying, not getting anywhere. So I reached out at my level, city manager. His proposed response back was 20%. Talking with his mayor, to his council, that was the terms of their deal. I get the fact that in perpetuity, that's a hard pill to swallow. It could be looked at as well that, as it stands right now, we will never get a dime off that property in any kind of tax situation. So 80% is better than 20%. I'm not a big fan of in perpetuity as well. As far as the zoning, everything in purple up there is industrial. The property owner also owns the 55-acre triangle parcel to the south, and that is what he is ultimately trying to make certain gets developed. So this is key to him because Wichita has not been playing nice with him as far as development purposes.
And that triangle to the south is already Park City.
That is already Parks. Everything in purple is Park City. Everything in the green shade is Wichita, and the stuff up in the top left corner is Valley Center. We don't talk about
Armstrong that's running diagonal?
that. That is Armstrong Circle, just on the north side of that.
Okay.
Tom?
I agree with the comments. We don't need another agreement. We've got one of these now, and I don't want to have somebody administrate it. On water, we've got something real similar to this, so I don't know why the property owner can't go to Sedgwick County and say he wants to be annexed and let them rule on it.
Well, he can ask them, but they can
I
say
don't
no.
know.
They're under no
And
obligation.
and they've said no. I mean, they have no, they're under no obligation to say yes.
Okay,
and
you're
that's-
talking about the county.
No, the city of Wichita.
Well, they can approach the county too, I believe.
No, he has no recourse other than begging them to do it. Yeah. This isn't a review on an annexation. This was annexed, what, 20 years ago?
21 years ago.
Yeah, right.
So that time limit for any proposed plans of providing service, none of that applies. We had already researched that as well. County does not have any say-so in this. It's strictly up to the city of Wichita, and they're under no obligation to de-annex it at all. So.
Jim?
Okay, so, sorry, my mind got sucked into what we're saying here. The comment earlier that we'll never get any tax dollars off of this, well, neither will the city of Wichita because they won't allow it to be developed. They're not helping the current owner. So I don't want to slam the door on the current owner. So I would be in favor of giving you some leniency to go back and say, in perpetuity, is that the word? In perpetuity is not an option.
What?
But maybe 5 years is. Maybe there just needs to be a sunset date in it.
I would entertain a motion that would authorize Sean and I to negotiate with Wichita and then bring it back to the council again.
I'd agree.
Because I gotta tell you, I'm on board with that. I mean, I'm even looking at, is there a possibility that we could have the landowner make a payment to the city of Wichita for the taxes they're gonna be losing over the whatever term of whatever that is. I don't know what that would be, and I don't know if that would work. I'm just saying, just what are the other options out there in addition to this? Because right now, they don't have infrastructure that'll get to this spot. So the only other option would be we provide water and sewer that were just to the north of it. So that's what I would ask Sean, and if you have any suggestions on that, please pipe in. Jim, you're done.
Oh, I'm done, yeah.
Tom?
So we're looking at 20% of the developed property value
Correct.
for taxes.
Or paid. That's the way that it's paid.
It's not the value of the property, it's 20% of the ad valorem taxes
Right.
collected by the city of Park City.
As
So
in-
if they're abated, then that means there's zero that year.
Right, but if he puts a $5 million building on there, then whatever that generates, we would give them 20%.
Whatever it generates and is paid to Park City.
Right.
If it's abated for 10 or 15 years, then there's zero paid for that period of time. So 20% of zero is zero.
But after that point with no sunset, we pay forever. We would give them back.
That's correct.
Right.
Ben?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to approve the mayor and city administrator to renegotiate this with the city of Wichita.
But we should give them some, should we give them some guidelines?
Yeah, we want a sunset.
Well, what,
I mean, but
let's leave that out.
Yeah.
If you would, and,
Okay.
yeah. Charlie?
I'll second.
Thank you. Tom?
Before anything happens, that'll be brought back to us?
Yes. You have to approve it.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item 15, executive session consultation. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you guys, that's right, I forgot about you. Item 14A, approve the city administrator's revised job description, and I think the question is, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the change in that was, if you look at the third bullet point, we changed where, it says recommends to the mayor and city council employment and termination of appointed officers. Before that, it was employees. And that's not the case, we haven't done that forever. So we just added in the appointed officers. And then, of course, at the bottom, the date will be different, and then it has my name instead of D. Stewart's name.
Who are the appointed officers, I guess is my question.
Department heads.
Oh, just department heads?
B would be the
No,
treasurer.
appointed officers would be the city clerk, city attorney?
No,
No?
he's appointed by the
City
mayor.
clerk and city treasurer.
I thought the treasurer was appointed by the mayor, too.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying, you asked.
Appointed
who-
officials.
In what context? I was just listing the two that I knew were appointed. Appointed, is the question appointed by whom?
Here, let me read it to you, Doug. On the city administrator's job description, it's recommends to the mayor and city council employment and termination of appointed officers. Who would the officers be? I was thinking it was like the chief, the department heads. Marlo would be,
Regular department heads are employees.
so do we even need that line then?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not, I don't like that term.
Okay.
Is that come from is that from the existing job
No.
description?
The existing job description sits there and says, make recommendations on all employees. And that's what was changed, is the fact that council does not hire or terminate all employees.
Correct.
It's the city administrator's responsibility to do that. But under appointed officers, as in the chief of police, city clerk, those things that are identified as appointed officers under state statute, I would make a recommendation to the council, just basically a recommendation, but it is the governing body or the mayor's responsibility to appoint, but with my recommendation.
Yeah, at this point, I think the chief, we've been through this before. Police officers are not appointed, they're hired, they're employees. The positions would be a better word, and I would think that would be the city clerk, the city treasurer. If you want to include me in that, that's fine too.
I don't think.
Well, I mean, that's the way, when I was hired 15 years ago, the mayor suggested my hiring to the city council and they approved it.
I think, isn't.
But I'm an employee, so, I mean, but I'm kind of a different animal, so those, but that's about the only three that I can think of right there. I don't think that I think it's appropriate that the description reads in a way that does not imply in any way that the city council as a body approves the hiring of employees. That's clearly an administrative matter for the city administrator. That the council has in everything they've done for the past 20-plus years, they've made that clear.
That's what we took out. So would you recommend a change in the verbiage of appointed officers? Or how about, why don't we just change it?
You could make it appointed positions of city clerk, city treasurer, and city attorney, if that made everybody feel.
What if we just put department heads, because really that's what.
Well,
the CFO, I mean, that would include every.
So what exactly is recommended to the mayor and the council on that? Is it for our approval? You're saying that the determination and the employment is recommended to us. What is recommended to us? I guess I'm confused. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
It says recommends to the mayor and city council the employment and termination of appointed officers. So, do we vote on department heads? Is that what it's saying? That's what I'm confused about.
You do not.
Am I misreading it? Help me understand, I guess.
And that's the thing about it. I didn't think that it would be so contentious. Recommends to the mayor and city council employment and termination of appointed officers. State statute talks about appointed officers being city clerk, city treasurer, city attorney, and to my knowledge, it also references the chief of police. And I would venture that on those particular ones, I would make a recommendation to council, and I think I would work in concert with council, and I don't think that I would recommend something council was against, or council would go looking to do something that we weren't in concurrence with. It's a recommendation. But all other employees resides under my job description, which is what it was listed previously, and that's clearly not the practice that's done today.
But those recommendations are your decision, final decision, not ours, is what I'm asking.
No, make a recommendation. That's,
Recommendation.
if we were to hire somebody new in one of those positions, I would sit there and do the interview process and probably may even consult council on a subcommittee and say, okay, we're looking for a new, don't say. But here's a recommendation, council.
Which, that's what
And
we
there
did.
would be concurrence. Would be somebody I'm strongly recommending, and I would think that the council would go along and concur with that.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's just because of the fact state statute does identify certain individuals that are within the city as officers, appointed officers. That was the thought behind it.
I just remember when we hired the chief, we did the same thing. We put a committee together. It had
Yes.
Jack and two council members. I was one.
That's correct.
No, and anyway, we made a recommendation to the council, and the council approved it.
Yes.
Okay, that's what my question is.
There was one.
Thank you.
My guess is if there was a termination, it would be the same type of,
Yes.
be a recommendation.
Maybe just specify in there, specify exactly who that is. Perhaps that would
Well,
clean
and
that up
that's,
a little bit.
as Doug indicated, city clerk, city treasurer, city attorney,
Chief of police.
chief of police.
Could we solve that by possibly just as a subtext, putting in the state statute that identifies who the appointed officers are, and then we know what
No,
that is?
because it includes law enforcement officers. I mean, I
Right.
don't mean to be, it's not a clean way to do it.
Okay.
Law enforcement officers are officers under that statute, but they're not the people that I think you want to have this process apply to.
So
Their
it would be-
termination and their hiring ought to be done by staff.
So we do need to clarify what positions would be your
Yeah,
recommendation?
just list the 4.
I'll go ahead and make a motion if there's.
Tom?
At one point, these were appointed positions every year, and now they're not. They're hired employees, and Sean's one of them. The chief is one, county clerk, or the city clerk is one. All 3 of them used to be appointed, and we changed that and opted out of it. And what you're asking for is to have that control back, whatever we call it.
No.
Correct? Or, I mean,
No.
in the
No,
hiring.
no, no, no. All we
hiring-
did,
Okay.
we took out that he makes recommendations to the council on hiring and firing of all employees. We took that out where it only says appointed officers.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, those appointed officers used to be appointed every year and voted on by council, and we changed that, so it's.
Okay, this doesn't change
And that's
that.
what you're trying to change.
No, no, this does not change that. That is gonna be
I'm
exactly
not saying
as
it right.
was.
We've got the same people that we're trying to manage with the document, and they're just called something else now.
Okay.
They used to be appointed by the council and the mayor appointed, and the council voted every year. We've taken that out and made all of them employees now. But there's management employees, senior management employees, and employees. And so we're doing the same thing we've always done. You're just asking for a little bit different wording.
We took out recommending hiring and firing of all city employees.
Okay.
That
that's
won't
fine.
happen anymore. I mean, it didn't happen before, but it was written in here.
Yeah, okay.
Now we're gonna continue doing the same practice we have, but it's more spelled out to how we're doing it.
But we're trying to take state words and put them into our process, and that's what's confusing here.
Yeah. Charlie?
I make a motion that we approve city administrator's revised job description with the change on bullet point number 3 to say the termination of appointed officers, which includes the, what'd we say, chief of police, city clerk, city attorney,
And city treasurer.
and city treasurer.
Okay, Ben?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. There's no more comments pending. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item 14B, approve and authorize mayor to execute a contract with Victory Pyrotechnics for CRB 4th of July celebration. Charlie?
I appreciate the CRB and all the work they do, and I obviously appreciate the men and women who have sacrificed for our country. I just have a question. I'm not a pyrotechnic, expert by any means. Is the 20,000, is that an average cost for something to do? Have we done this before?
Yes, sir, we have.
We have, okay. That was all I had.
Ben?
Yeah, I'd go ahead and make a motion then to approve and authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Victory Pyrotechnics for CRB 4th of July celebration.
Kyle?
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Have no further pending comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 15, executive session. Consultation with the city attorney on matters privileged under the attorney-client relationship related to contract negotiations. I would entertain a motion for that. Ben?
Yeah, I'd go ahead and make a motion to recess into executive session. But 10,
10 minutes?
10, 15?
10 minutes, the governing body, the city administrator, the assistant administrator, and the city attorney.
with those mentioned for 15 minutes to discuss matters privileged under the attorney-client relationship related to contract negotiations.
Okay, have a motion. Charlie?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. that motion as 10 or 15? That's what I heard him say. I think we need to wait a few minutes. I wrote down 15.
I heard 10 also.
Who did?
We got time.
I'm gonna watch it now.
Let's go back.
I'm just sure I heard 15. Okay, we are back from executive session. No binding action was taken. So we'll move on to governing body reports. Jim?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Brandy?
I have nothing.
Tom?
Have nothing.
Kyle?
I just want to say happy birthday to my little son. It's his birthday this week. Other than that, I just really would urge city staff to come back in the CIP discussion with something about connectivity. And then if we can get something on the books to have a discussion regarding final rule that just came out and how we're going to tackle that with ARPA funds and everything.
Ben?
Yeah, I would agree with the CIP comments and just making sure we bring back something concerning our connectivity plan and how to move forward on that. Also, so talking with our city administrator earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, I don't even remember, I guess it was last week. And just want to again stress the importance to each one of us, just to take advantage of the time that we have with family and friends. We're not guaranteed tomorrow, and we don't know when tomorrow doesn't come. And so live each day making sure that those that you love and care about know that, and spend time with them, so.
George?
Yeah, speaking of time, our Park City Fishing Derby is coming up June 18th from 9 to 11. Mark it on your calendar. This will be our 13th year. So it's been a big community event. We want everyone to come out. It's a free event, sponsored by the city of Park City. So come out and have a good time spent with your families and friends. Thank you.
Charlie?
Just say happy Easter, everybody. Hope you, thank you to Sean for wearing his Easter colors this evening. And he said he had plenty of ties to switch on at every meeting, so I expect to see that. Hope you can spend time with family and friends celebrating our risen Savior. And I look forward to the budget discussions and I think we got a lot of work to do on roads and sidewalks, and obviously 50,000 on sidewalks is not enough. I wouldn't know that till tonight. So I look forward to those discussions and appreciate the staff and all the work they do for us each and every day. That's all I got.
Okay, I'm just gonna do a reminder on this Saturday is the brush and tree and limb pickup at McLean Park, and I believe they're having it there between the pool and the shelter house. And the times on that were
7 to 1.
8 to 1?
8 to 1 o'clock.
8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And at the same time as the Easter egg hunt in the morning, but it's gonna be over in the park area.
That is correct.
By the BMX, okay. And then also, we've set up a kind of a blood drive challenge. This will be on May 31st. As many of you know, there's a blood shortage. So we've kind of organized a challenge to challenge the city of Valley Center and the residents there to see who could get the most blood donations. So it'll be May 31st here at the City Hall building. They'll be parked outside from noon to 6 p.m.
That is correct. The donations are going to be in the training room, so.
So I urge each of our council members to make sure you schedule that. There's a link on our Facebook page where you can actually schedule it, show up, and they're ready to go for you. So I'd love to see the public jump in on that. Sean and I are working on putting together a budget type forum, a discussion with the county commissioner here on April 9th at 6 p.m. We're still kind of working.
May 9th.
I'm sorry, May 9th. April 9th, so you guys missed it. On May 9th at 6 p.m. here, and there's still some things to work out, but we're just kind of coming up with some stuff. I want to give you guys a heads up. And then the other thing too is there's an opportunity, I've chatted with Sean a little bit about it, but I'd mentioned a while back about planting trees in memory of former council or former governing body members, and there's an opportunity coming up in the near future to do one. Does anybody have any opposition or any issues with doing that? Okay, so is what we'll do, and for now we'll come up with, we already have a budget amount that we spend on trees, and we'll just utilize that, and then be in touch as to when we do it. But there's one coming up in the near future that we're still working on before we want to announce who it is and whatnot. So that's all I have. So thank you guys for your work tonight, and also in the workshop. I would entertain a motion. Ben?
Yeah, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Tom?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We're adjourned.